yes, so we'll move on to our backs now. And so what I meant to say is just sort of take breaks as you need to. So if you start to feel that everything is getting a bit too much and you're feeling hot, then just, take it easy. And we're going to be focusing quite a lot today on moving around the pelvis and the hips. We're also going to do a little bit of, have a couple of little short periods of breathing. So just start lying down and perhaps 2 or 3 breaths, just sort of settling. If you've been there for a little while, the first movement we're going to do is to bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor, and to start to let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. So we've got this beautiful weather. It gives us this benefit that maybe our bodies feel a little sort of bit looser and easier, but also we maybe get a little bit more tired. Also need to make sure we're drinking water. And I think particularly in around the pelvis and into the hip joints, everything can feel a little bit more mobile. So a couple more times, let your knees tilt to the right and to the left, and just see how this feels. See how it feels around the pelvis, into the lower back. And then just let yourself settle in the center. And maybe bring your hands onto the front of your body, and just for 2 or 3 cycles of breath, feel the movement of your breath somewhere in the front of yourself. So we have this sense, I suppose this soothing, calming sense when we come to our breath. That's that familiarity. It's, reassuring, settling, feeling the movement of our breathing. We're going to come back to that tilting movement, but we're going to do it with just one knee now. So maybe you do your right knee. Just start to let your right knee tip out to the side, and then back over towards the other knee. So it's not going to move so far towards the other knee. Yeah, so we're thinking more about the movement out to the side. And because you're tilting just one knee, this becomes more about a movement in the hip joints at the moment. So do this a couple more times. And you can either, you can either keep your hands on the front of your body or rest your arms beside you. So the right knee moving out to the side and then back towards the other knee. Now, we're going to add in a sort of second movement to this. So as your knee starts to fall out to the side, I would like you to press into your left foot and let the left side of your pelvis come away from the floor. That's it. So the right knee tilts out to the side. You press into your left foot, let the left side of the pelvis come away from the floor. Good. And then come back to your starting point. And keep repeating that a few times. So the right knee out to the side, pressing into the left foot. Good. Let the left side of the pelvis come away from the floor. So effectively what you're doing is you're helping that right knee travel out to the side and possibly towards the floor by letting your pelvis tilt over towards the right. Just carry on repeating this movement. If you feel that your knee is not coming all the way to the floor and you want to put a cushion under it, you could do. And what I'm going to suggest now is really up to you. If it's comfortable, you could try staying there for a couple of breaths with your knee coming out to the side. That might be a point at which you want to have a cushion under your knee if it doesn't reach the floor. But you could also just keep moving. So that's it. So if you want to support that knee, are you all right? Yeah, you look fine. Good. Just a couple of breaths. Then come back to the center and just lie in a comfortable way. So it could be knees bent, it could be lengthening your legs out. Just before we come on to the other side, says in my notes, rest between sides. I think I was doing this when I was really very hot and tired yesterday. So a little rest. And then we'll come off the side of the tea. Good. So perhaps feel a breath come in, feel a breath leave you. And if you lengthened your legs out, then bend both knees again and stand your feet on the floor. And come back to the first movement. So the first movement is just letting the left knee tilt out to the side. It's very tempting at this point to start pressing into your right foot because we know that it makes it easier. But do a few times where you're just letting the left knee come out to the side and you're seeing what range of movement you have there and how that feels. And then whenever you like, you can start to add in that movement of pressing down into your right foot as the left knee is moving out to the side. So you're helping that movement of the left knee out to the side by allowing the right side of the pelvis to come away from the floor, by allowing the pelvis to tilt over towards the left. So yes, this is a movement of the left hip joint, but we're also letting the pelvis take part too. And then we can feel also that the ribs are moving a little bit towards the left as well. So again, it's up to you. You can keep repeating this a few more times, or you can stay there for a few breaths, letting your knee come out to the side. That's it, putting a cushion under your left knee if you so wish, if it doesn't comfortably come to a place where it can rest. That's good. And let the breath come in, let the breath leave. So perhaps just one or two more cycles of breath there. And then whenever you're ready, that's nice and good. Come back to the center. It is quite nice to lengthen your legs out. Even if you don't want to stay with your legs long, it's quite nice to lengthen them out. And the other thing, perhaps, once you've lengthened your legs out, it might be quite nice to then fold both knees into your chest. And you could have a little rock from side to side across the back of your pelvis. You could also take your arms and legs up towards the ceiling, give them a little shake out. So it's always nice to take the legs up in warm weather. And we're going to do one more movement on our back around our hip joints. So when you're ready, come back and just settle yourself with your knees bent and your feet standing on the floor. And then this time you're going to fold your right knee into your chest and then let the right knee come out to the side and bring your ankle onto your left thigh close to your knee. That's it. That's it. So right ankle's coming onto your left thigh close to your knee. Good. And then you're going to start to rock side to side on your standing foot. So your left foot, which is still on the floor, you're rocking side to side. And again, this can be a big movement or a small movement, whatever feels comfortable. So you've got this option of rocking here, side to side on the standing foot. You've also got an option of folding in here. So you might like to pause in the center, pick your left foot off the floor and catch your hands around the back of your left thigh. So one hand goes through that hole you've created between your legs. That's it. And have a couple of breaths. So just check that your back and your hip and everything's happy with that movement. Sometimes that when we catch around the back of our leg here, it can be a bit of a strain for the back of the neck. So just make sure it's not pulling on your neck or shoulders. Good. You can always put a cushion under your head if that's the case. Yeah. That's nice. A couple of breaths. You can come back to a bit of rocking. You might like to briefly lengthen your legs out before we do the other side. Again, yeah, very nice to lie long for a moment. That's a good idea then to put a cushion under your head if it isn't so comfy when you fold it in. Good. Long legs for a moment and then moving on to side two. So this time we will knees bent, stand the feet on the floor and then fold the left knee into the chest and then the left ankle to rest on the right arm. And then come to that feeling of Feeling that movement of rocking side to side on the standing foot. So your right foot's on the floor now, your left ankle is resting on your right arm. And remember, you can always, if you feel that your foot's a bit too much off to the side, you can bring that standing foot so it's a bit more centered. And it's up to you now. You can carry on with a bit more rocking. If you feel that you'd like to do the folding in, picking your right foot off the floor, catching your hands around the back of your right thigh, you can do. And, you know, we're still quite early on in class for these movements. It's probably because it's a warm day. I thought we would give them a little go. Yes, don't do anything that doesn't feel right for your body. So wherever you are, folded in or rocking, just another breath or two. And then let yourself, that's it, release your legs, let yourself lie long on the ground. That's very nice. So feel the length of yourself from your head to your heels, because from lying long, we're going to be rolling over onto one side and we're coming into Anantasana, our side balance. And so this is always one that I like to do when it's warm and I'm thinking, okay, I've long enough lying down now. I'm going to do something a bit more lively, but it's still lying down really, isn't it? So come onto your side. I'm propping up my head in my hand and my top hand's on the floor in front of me. You could have your bottom arm long and rest your head on your arm, or you could bend your bottom elbow and make it like a little pillow. It doesn't matter too much. So our first thing would be, if we've got our top hand on the floor in front of us, we could look down our body and we want to be able to see our toes. So I've sort of got my fingertips on the floor, I'm looking down to my feet, I'm seeing my toes. If I could see my ankles, my feet would be too powerful. We can do a little bit of rocking, just can we settle ourselves on our side. And then what we're going to do from here is, we've got a couple of movements we can do from here. We can bring our top leg into tree pose and see how it feels to settle here. And you might, yes, it's quite good because you might need one to grab your ankle. That means you have to take your hand off the floor. Good, so we can see how that is. And then from there, we can start to move that top knee up towards our armpit on the top side of our body. Now, at this point, if you feel very wobbly, you can bend your bottom knee and slide that knee forward. And then from here, we catch onto our leg somehow, or our trouser leg, or our big toe, it doesn't really matter. And we lengthen this leg up towards the ceiling. And then just try and have a feeling of really sending your awareness into both heels. And just feel the whole length of your body. That awareness, very nice. We're just trying to be here, sort of breathing, settling, but also starting to wake up a little bit. Wake up through the leg. So when you're ready to come down, just sort of try and reverse those movements to come back. You don't have to spend long. Knee to armpit, back into tree pose, back into two longs. And then from here, you're going to roll onto your belly and just have a few breaths on your belly before we do side two. So, I tend to have one hand on top of the other, and my forehead on my cheek on the hands. You can wiggle your pelvis a bit, if you like, to help you settle. And just, see how it feels to have a couple of nice, quiet breaths settled on your belly. And don't stay there too long, you'll drift off. We will roll onto side two when you're ready and settle yourself down the side two of Anantasana, your side balance. Don't worry, you'll get another chance to rest on your belly after we've done this second side of the balance. So again, just sort of organising your arm to support your head, you're propping your head up and arm out, bending the elbow, whatever feels more comfortable. Again, we can come onto our fingertips, look down towards our feet. I feel always we're in a sort of long line as possible rather than a banana shape. And then with top hands on the floor, we can just do a bit of rocking forwards and back, feeling the side of ourselves on the ground. and trying to settle through our spine. And once you start to feel settled, then we can explore the tree pose first of all. Again, there's that helpful bit when we maybe catch our ankle or our hand comes off the floor. And then from tree on to drawing the knee in towards the arm on the top side of the body. Yes, and then on to lengthening out your top leg. Think if we can find that steadiness, we're extending into both heels, we're breathing here, we're just feeling this sort of length of our legs, the sense of our body starting to open up. And then we've got this sense of being alert but relaxed at the same time. And in your own time, you can make your way back down through those various different stages and back onto your belly. So for a few more breaths. And I'm afraid at that point you have to stop lying down. Now when you end up on your belly, you can wiggle your pelvis and just to see how you feel, because from the belly we're going to fold into child pose. But if you're really happy on your belly, you can have a few more breaths here. If you're less happy on your belly, then fold into child pose. It's often probably an issue of the lower back. So if you're someone who can be a bit tight in the lower back, then child pose perhaps gives you that opportunity to let the lower back lengthen out. So on your belly, and eventually moving into child pose. And then again, in your own time, what I'd like you to do, so belly, child pose, a dog pose, and then I want us to do a little bit of breathing, but let's do a dog pose first and just see how it feels to take those long legs that we had in the side balance into a dog pose. And then we'll settle down a little bit. See how it feels to come into a dog. And it might be in this dog pose that everything's feeling a little bit, tight or creaky through the backs of the legs, upper back, shoulders. Let the head hang, let the breath move through you. And then from dog, I was going to suggest that we sat in kneeling, just to do a short little bit of breathing. But if kneeling's not so good for you, sit in a more comfortable way. So if it's better for you to have your back against a wall and your legs long, or sit cross-legged, that's absolutely fine. But if you can sit comfortably in kneeling, then it's good to do. And we're just very simply going to do the breathing exercise where we touch our thumb to each finger in turn for a cycle of breath, and then we go back up the fingers. So it just gives us a moment to sit quietly with our breath. And then we'll sort of try and take this quiet focus of the breathing into dog pose again. So start by resting the backs of your hands on your thighs. And you're going to start by bringing your thumb and index finger to touch. And you might like to close your eyes at that point, and you're going to feel a breath come in, and you're going to feel a breath leave. And then you're going to move your thumb onto your next finger, your middle finger, and you're going to feel a breath come in and feel a breath leave. And then your thumb moves to your ring finger, and again, receive an inhalation, let an exhalation go. And then finally your thumb moves to your little finger. Let a breath come in, let a breath leave. And then in your own time, you're going to go back up the fingers. So you're going to go back to the ring finger and then the middle finger and so on with a cycle of breath, an inhalation and exhalation touching each of the fingers. So you get up, back up to your index finger. And then come back onto hands and knees. So we've got this awareness perhaps, so maybe greater awareness in our hands, and also perhaps this greater awareness of the breathing. And see how it feels to come back into dog pose. So tucking your toes under, exhaling, coming up into dog pose, and yeah, just how does it feel? Perhaps we can be a little bit more aware of the feeling of the handprints on the floor. Perhaps we can be a little bit more aware of the feeling of the flow of the breath through the body. And what I'd like you to do in your own time is you can obviously stay in this dog, and when you're ready to come out, come into child pose for a couple of breaths, and then you're going to do another dog pose. And from that second dog, we'll move into standing, but just give yourself time. So give yourself time to stay in dog, to have some breaths in child pose. And then to revisit a second dog pose. Dog would be the third dog, won't it? So which might be when we come to the third dog, just starting to ease out a bit more. So yeah, then take your time. So from this third dog pose, when you've had some time in this third dog pose, you'll be walking your hands into your feet and coming in again. The dog pose for a few breaths. Forward bend for a few breaths. Remember, once you come to your forward bend, you can have a look at your feet. Keep your toes nice and long and relaxed. You can rest your elbows on your thighs. And then from there, we'll start to roll up into standing, walking the hands up the thighs if your lower back needs any support. So the first thing I wanted us to do is just to settle in standing. So perhaps look down at your feet. That's usually my number one thing for settling and standing, is looking at my feet. And then stopping looking at my feet, maybe even closing the eyes, do a little bit of swaying, so letting your weight shift over your right leg and over your left. And in a moment, we're going to do a little, I say sort of mini balance. We're going to do a very sort of simple little tree pose. So as you're swaying from side to side, you could just decide which foot and leg you'd like to stand on first. And because we're going to do a little tree, we're just going to be taking our foot onto our ankle. We could start by bringing our hands into prayer pose. And I find that can be quite helpful just in terms of feeling settled and centered. So hands in prayer pose, then starting to bring your weight over your chosen foot and come up onto the ball of the other foot. So we can just feel weight starting to stabilize through one leg. Then we're going to let the knee turn out a little bit, bring our foot onto our ankle. You could keep a toe or two still on the floor. Make it go easy on yourself. Just how does it feel to be in sort of little mini free pose? As much as possible, we're encouraging ourselves, inviting ourselves to settle, to quieten. That's the reality, might not quite be the same. Shake out. So sometimes it can, really help to just shake everything out a little bit before we try the second side. And then again, start with that same sort of attention, looking down at your feet, and then stopping, looking at your feet, feeling your feet on the floor. Maybe finding a point ahead of yourself to focus on, bringing the hands into prayer pose. With my hands in prayer pose, I've got my thumbs on my breastbone, so it's sort of keeping the hands out of the way a little bit. And as we all know, so we can then start to shift our weight onto our second leg. Other knee's going to come out a little bit, that's it, bringing our foot onto our ankle. And as we all know, that's that point between the throat and the heart, that Karmanadi, sort of settling place. So if the thumbs are in contact with the breastbone, that can be quite quiet. So see how you feel on side two. Smiling. Making sure you're not gripping the teeth, relaxing the jaw, breathing, feeling the flow of your breath. The shoulders soften. You really get the shoulders softened. Good. Down, a little shake out, and then when you're ready, you're just going to come into sort of a quiet, simple forward bend. So settling both feet down a little distance apart. You might like to come forwards onto your forearms, and then you might like to release your arms to the floor. Just, If you feel that you want a bit of movement in that forward bend, you could be letting your arms sweep from side to side, but just, very much just a sense of what is going to feel good in your body now. Do you need to be quiet and focus on the breath, or do you want to move a little bit? So, and then from your forward bend, you're going to sink into your heels, and you're going to roll up into standing, or walk the hands up the front and arrive back in standing. Back in standing, we're going to come into this loose, easy swing twist. Good. And what I'd like you to notice in this is how everything's moving, how we're letting our pelvis move. And we're going to be exploring this a little bit more in a moment in standing. We've got something else to do first of all, but I just want you to feel how we can turn and we can let our pelvis move. Good. Okay, more times. Let's doing this. Eventually we'll let it go and we'll settle down. Let's settle back down with our feet a little distance apart and our hands in prayer pose again. Just take a moment, maybe closing your eyes, to feel the contact of your feet on the floor, to feel the contact of your hands. From here, we're going to let a breath come in, and as you exhale, you're going to take your arms down and then up. Just feel yourself long and tall with your arms up for a moment, and then swing your arms and cross them in front of you. So I'm crossing that's it, one arm and then the other arm. And eventually you're going to give yourself a hug with your right arm on top. So end up, so you're giving yourself a hug. And I'd say have your right arm on top because then you don't have to remember. Here, when you're giving yourself a hug, could you leave your pelvis facing forward and just turn your shoulders a little bit to the right and to the left. It's going to be your ribs as well, so from the waist up. So different than that last twist where we were letting the pelvis move a little. Okay. And then pause in the centre and come on into your eagle arms. And we'll take this into a forward bend. So you could take your feet a bit wider apart, as wide as the narrow edge of your mat. And then sinking into your heels. I tend to bend my knees in this, coming forwards. And at any point you can release your arms. So it's up to you whether you keep your arms in eagle arms or you release them down to the ground. That's nice, or you can resting your elbows on your thigh. And give yourself a few breaths in the forward bend, letting your head hang, feeling very rooted down into your heels. If you haven't released your arms, it might be nice to do so. Just let the arms drop down to the floor. Let a breath come in as you exhale, sink into your heels. Roll up into stand. And then step your feet a little bit closer together again. Come back with your hands to prayer pose for a moment. Let a breath come in as you exhale. Take your arms down and then up, long and tall, and then swinging those arms, crossing them in front of you. So if you did the arm that I said, you have to cross your arms with your left arm on top this time. I'm just saying arms because I've realised I find it so hard if I'm not thinking about this one to remember which arm I've done. So give yourself a hug with your left arm on top. Let your shoulders drop down away from your ears. And then again, you could just do that little turning movement. So can the pelvis stay pointing forwards? Can I turn my shoulders and my ribs a little bit to the right and to the left? It's not going to be huge. Good. And we can pause in the centre. We can come on into our eagle arms. That's very nice. And we can take this into the forward bend. So stepping the feet a bit wider apart, sinking down into the heels, folding forwards, the knees can bend a little bit or a lot. Again, have a look at your toes. Make sure the toes are long and relaxed, not going white or gripping the floor. And of course, whenever you want to release your arms, release your arms. And just have a couple more breaths in the forward bend. Sinking down into the heels, let the head go. Very nice. And then, yes, sinking into the heels, rolling up into stand. I think, yes, we're coming back to this one. Coming back to swinging the arms into this loose, easy swinging twist. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to come on to this sort of thinking about whether we fix our pelvis or move our pelvis. And we're going to be moving into some balances. And I just think very much work at your own pace. We're moving into the lively bit, Sally, as I was saying earlier. Okay, so do that a couple more times. And then we're going to come to stand on our mats. So come to stand with your feet a little distance apart. And just with a bit of room in front of you that you can step forwards with one foot. And I'm just going to... Yes, okay. So we're going to step 1 foot forwards on the mat. And then we're going to do this very familiar sort of, that's it, shifting our weight forwards and back. So we come onto the ball of the back foot, the heel of the front foot. For me, this is just, keep your arms nice and relaxed. For me, this is just quite instantly calming. Feeling 1 foot on the floor, weight in 1 foot, weight in the other. Now, what I'd like you to do is then settle down through both legs. So you're not rocking forwards and back. And just look at your, have a look at your feet. So that's it. You've got to a still bit of distance sideways, and both feet pointing forwards as much as possible. And then bring your hands onto your pelvis. So I would like you now at this point to try to swing your arms and turn without moving your pelvis. And it might feel quite unnatural. But that's it. Stability, sort of swing your arms, but leave your pelvis facing forwards. Okay. Good. A couple more times. Now, we're going to come into a forward bend. We're going to bend the front knee, and we're going to come to rest first of all onto that front leg. And then from there, you can go a little bit lower. You can release your head down towards the floor, your fingertips. And at this point, you might like to, now if your fingertips don't touch the floor, you'd like you to do here is just see what would it be like to start to bring your weight forward, your front leg. You might have to bend your knee more. And could you bring your back foot off the floor? That's as far as you're going to go. So yeah, is it possible here to bring your weight more onto your front foot and also into your fingertips and bring your back leg off the floor? Very nice. Yes, that's good. That's good. And then you can come back up.
That's quite hard work, isn't it?
So it can be quite hard work. So we're sort of approaching a balance in a couple of different ways. And so what I'm interested in for you to see is which feels harder work. And yeah, it can feel quite hard work. So let's come back up. Let's come back to things side by side. And we're going to step the other foot forwards. So now you know, I never know really, because now you know where we're going to. I don't know whether it makes it feel worse or better. It might be more, yeah. Side two is always probably a little bit easier because we've done it on side one. So a little bit more rocking forwards. And then again, eventually we're going to settle down. We're going to look down at our feet, just sort of check feet are pointing forward. And then bring your hands onto your pelvis. So again, we're going to swing our arms and we're just going to try and leave our pelvis where it is. Now, I didn't say this on the other side when you were lifting your leg, but when you lift your leg, if it makes it easier for you to sort of roll your pelvis, so your top hip, the raised leg hip comes up a bit, that's fine. If that seems to want to happen naturally. If it doesn't, don't worry. Okay, we're probably all now anticipating coming forwards and lifting our legs. So let's bend that front knee. And you can just come to rest forward. So if we're in this place where we're resting on that front thigh, we're already thinking a little bit more about our weight coming into our front foot. And then if we start to release the arms down, let the head go, we can come into a forward bend. You don't have to, if you really don't want to take your back leg off the ground, that's fine. If you are going to take your back leg off the ground, you probably need to bend your front knee more. And then once your back leg comes off the ground, and again, yes, if you feel there's this sort of impulse to roll your pelvis a little bit. Yeah. Again, don't that's nice. Well done. Beautiful. Yeah, don't get yourself into too effortful a place just yet. And then you can bring your foot back down, come up into standing and have a little shake out. And then we're going to approach this in a different way. And I was doing some yoga with friends camping this summer, and it was just really interesting to talk about yoga and different approaches to poses. And so this what we're doing now sort of came from there. So I think I'm going to turn around. So what I'd like you to do is come back to stepping your first foot forwards. Okay, so the first foot you had forward, step it forwards on that. Do your rocking forwards and back. And then do you come into the settling down. Now this time, I want you to think about turning just towards your back leg and actually let your pelvis move. Yeah? So So if you turn towards your back leg, I think it probably feels more natural to let your pelvis go with you. And if you're letting your pelvis go with you, you might actually want to also let your foot turn out a little bit. So that's another possibility, the back foot, yeah? Okay, so we end up in this place where we're turned towards our back leg a bit more, with our pelvis also turned. And then we're going to be bending our front knee and bringing our arms out towards shoulder height. So we've got our back foot turned out a bit, we're bending the front knee a little bit. Now from here, you could start to explore bringing your weight more onto your front foot. So I'm keeping my arms like a big sail, and then I'm just seeing how does it feel, it might be a bit wobbly, to start tilting forwards. Start tilting forwards. Yeah. Towards. Yeah, and it might be that you come back again and you know, so I've been playing around with this quite a lot, and it at the start I was feeling very wobbly. I still feel quite wobbly, so you can come back, you can come to this place, and you might want to adjust your feet a little bit, take them slightly wider apart. So we've got our back foot turned out a little bit, we've got our arms wide, and I always think that arms are sort of almost like a big sail. And then as we start, we've got that bent front knee, and we're just starting to let ourselves tilt forwards, keeping this sort of width across the arms. Actually wobble a bit on the standing leg. Good. Very nice, well done. We're going to do the same thing on the other side now. So just come back to, maybe perhaps we do, before we do the side, let's just come down into a normal forward bend, and you could come into a squat as well if you like. So come into a normal forward bend, and then if you wish, go on into a squat and give yourself, that's it, just give yourself a flex in the squat. So this is just really to let your lower back lengthen out. And you could equally just be in a forward bend, letting your mind have a little bit of a rest. And then we'll sink down into the heels, we'll come back up and stand. Give the legs a little shake out, and then we'll get ready to try this movement again on side two. So feet being a little distance apart, you're going to step the other foot forwards now and do a bit of rocking forwards and back. And then we're going to settle the feet down. And at this point, our feet are both facing forwards, but we're going to, like we did last time, we're going to start this sort of turning towards the back leg, but letting the pelvis come along, which I think probably feels more natural. Yes, and as your pelvis turns, you may then find you want to turn your back foot out a little bit more. And eventually we're going to stay in this place where the pelvis and also we're turned more towards this back leg. And we can let the front knee bend. We can bring the arms out at shoulder height. So we've got this feeling of just being very wide and expansive through the body. And then what's it like to start to bring the weight into the front foot? You might keep bringing your big toe onto the ground. And then this feeling of wide arms forwards. Into the tree. So you might come back and try that again. So we've got this sort of starting point, wide across the arms, our pelvis is turned to the side a bit. How does it feel? You know, we don't have to go all the way. Can we keep this? I suppose what I'm thinking about here is a sort of light, a fairly light and spacious feeling in the body.
I wasn't quite sure which way, was it straight over across the front foot?
Yeah, so I mean, I think
I think yes, so we're thinking about half moon pose. So what you might want to do, so you might think, okay, I've had completely enough. What you might want to do is go back to our first way into it, which is slightly more structured.
Okay.
And think about that. So you've got a couple of options now, everyone. One is just have a little rest if you need to read our first way into this, which was coming forwards, lifting one leg, and you could be carrying on to that sort of movement we were doing then, which takes us towards half moon pose. That's an option. If you've got wall space, you could do this with your back against the wall, because that provides those really helpful reference points. As Marie was saying, is, you know, where am I? Where is my body in relation, and my arms in relation to my legs? So that's a really good option if you've got a little bit of wall space. Or you could revisit what we were just doing from standing. Perhaps that awareness is what we were moving into was half moon pose. Yes, that's nice. Yeah, so if you're using the wall, that's it then. You come into a forward, what I would tend to do is come into a forward bend with my pelvis right up by the wall. And then I'm just leaning back on the wall. So it just makes it rather lovely and easy. And it's also, that's it, we're sort of opening up with our back to the wall. And it means we can perhaps get more weight into the heel of our standing leg. Not your favourite.
I just can't get the balance on that.
You could try on the wall over there, Marie. There's a lot of wall space. So yes, do. Yes, that's it. Very nice. That's it, Francis. So then really send your weight more into your heel of your standing leg. So walk your hands. That's it. Walk your hands a bit more into your standing foot, I think. Very nice. Good. Yes, May, you could almost use that archway and have your hip against the wall of your arch. I'm pointing at it, which won't make any sense. Yes, have your hip coming to a forward bend with your hip against the archway. That might be quite good. It's a sort of very minimal reference point. Yeah, it goes, yeah, side on, that's it, side on there. How's that, Marie?
Much better. It's interesting. I'm fairly against it.
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? So if you do use the wall,
much more steady,
yeah. Yes, good move there, Lynn, for your lower back. You could come into a forward bend there as well. It's quite nice. So yeah, you could go forwards there. Good. If you're carrying on, that's nice, Francis. Yes, I mean, we could be here all day, couldn't we? Then coming back to this movement in the room. But if you've had enough of those, we were going to, our last thing in standing was coming into a wide forward bend. And I was just going to say that you come into sort of a quiet forward bend here. If you wanted to do any side bending movements or twists, you could do, but I was just thinking it would be nice to sink into your heels, to come forwards, to have a few quiet breaths. Again, if you're, I think after those half moon poses, you probably sort of be quiet. But yes, if you like, it is quite nice to do the side lengthening movements where you walk your hands to one foot and then the other. That's what you can do. Just see if there's somewhere in this wide forward bend. And Sarah, if you're on your back, you can take your legs up and wide on your back. That's quite nice. That's it. Get your legs up to the ceiling and then take them wide apart. Exactly. Everyone's going to want to join you there. And we're very relieved to hear that from being in our wide forward bend, we're actually going to come now and a little bit of sitting with our back against something and some breathing. So it could be your back against a sofa or a wall or a bed. You're okay against one of the sofas. Yeah. So, and we're going to come into Cobbler Pose first of all.
Some of you have done this. If you joined early today, we did Cobbler Pose at the beginning of class. So I thought we'd have to come to a few sitting things and then come back to a little bit of breathing. So think about it. So your feet could be any distance from your pelvis. Yeah. So think about or experiment with what's most comfortable for you. And if we've got the wall or the bed or the sofa behind us, then lock in the right place, then we don't have to worry about our spine. We can just let the wall or the sofa support us. We can let our shoulders settle and drop. If you've got a wall behind you, maybe try to avoid putting the back of your head against the wall, which is why actually a sofa is really helpful. So let's just have a couple of quiet breaths in Cobbler Pose. You could rest your hands on your thighs, palms up or palms down. Just close your eyes for a moment and gather your attention into your breathing. As much as possible, just let the weight of your body settle down onto the ground. So this is really the weight of the pelvis and the legs. We can feel heavy from the waist down, then this gives a sort of lightness to the spine without us having to hold ourselves. Here, another cycle or two of breath, feeling the breath come in, feeling the breath. And then from here, we're going to come on. You've got two choices next. We're going to come on to do a little bit. We do a couple of mudras. So you could either lengthen your legs out, or you could bring your legs into sort of an easier cross-legged position. So you might want to lengthen your legs first of all, and then you might think, okay, I'm going to maybe come into siddhasana, one heel in front of the other. But because Cobbler Pose isn't usually the most comfortable place for us to sit. And we're going to start by taking the backs of our hands onto our thighs. And this is the first mudra we're going to have a few breaths with. And this is the one which is Pushpata mudra. It's handful of blossom. So you can imagine that you're holding blossoms in your hands. And so the hands stay very sort of soft and relaxed so that you don't push the petals. And you can also just feel the back of your hands resting on your thighs. Feel the centers of the palms are soft. The fingers and the thumbs gently curving. If you let your awareness travel up your arms, you're letting your elbows feel heavy. You're letting the shoulders soften and undo as much as possible. Your awareness comes up into your face. You're letting the jaw soften and relax, the skin of the face soften. You bring your attention all the way to that point between your eyebrows. Just imagine that point becoming wide, spacious, and relaxed. If you bring your attention back to your hands, you're going to take your thumb and you're going to cross your thumb over your palm towards your ring finger. And then you're going to fold your forefingers around your thumb. You make these little fists. And then you'll turn your palms down on your thighs. So you've got your fingers wrapped around your thumb. And you turn your palms down on your thighs. And just let your hands settle. So in our awareness, we can feel the sensation of the thumbs encircled by the four fingers, and of the weight of the hands resting on the thighs. And we can also let our attention travel back up the arms to undo tension, to let the elbows and the shoulders drop. Make sure the jaw is soft and relaxed. We'll just sit here perhaps for another half a dozen cycles of breath. Let your awareness be quite expansive. You can be aware of the air on your skin, perhaps the sounds around you. If you find yourself getting distracted, just keep coming back to the sensation of the thumbs encircled by the fingers. Perhaps in the forefront of your mind. You've got the feeling of the hands in this mudra, this hand position. You're welcome to stay sitting here for another 2 or 3 cycles of breath, but you could also now, if you like, make your way over to lie down on your mat. Sort of, and just, I think, settle yourself down on your mat. Do a movement on that. So just settle yourself down and see how it feels to lie down and to give the weight of your body to the ground. And we might need to move over actually. We're going to do a floor twist and you're not going to have space. Good. Just give yourself a moment of lying on the mat. How does it feel to settle down? And to perhaps gather your attention into your breathing. So you might like to rest your hands on the front of your body. I thought in a moment we would do a floor twist and then we'll just come back to the sort of quiet breathing, being settled on. So for your floor twist, you can fold your knees into your chest. And at the moment, I tend to like to take my legs up to the ceiling then. So fold the knees into the chest, take the legs up to the ceiling, which is nice. Any time you can give the legs a little shake out. And then you're going to wrap one arm around the back of your legs. So I tend to do it, my legs are still quite long, and then fold the knees into the chest, let the heels come back to the bottom, and bring your other arm out on the floor at shoulder height. So I think you all know this familiar little floor twist. We've got one arm on the floor at shoulder height. As we exhale, we're bringing our knees down towards the floor on the outside. I quite like keeping my arm under my legs, my knees quite close to my chest, but obviously do what feels comfortable for you. And when you arrive in the floor twist, to our best ability, we're just trying to settle here and soften. And some days I feel I could stay there forever, other days it's maybe a few breaths and then back to the centre. So yes, if you feel that you can't settle there, then do come back to the centre. If you come back to the centre, you can just lie, put with your knees folded into your chest. You can take your legs up to the ceiling. Yeah, just very much take your own time. So it's fine if you're still on side one of the floor twist, it's all fine, and join on to side two. So if you're moving on to two, take your legs up to the ceiling, and wrap your arm around the back of your legs. The other arm is fine. Yes, and the other arm outstretched on the floor at shoulder height, but you just really try and be led by what feels good for your body today, which might be a few breaths in the floor twist, or which might be a few minutes in the floor twist. And as long as you're feeling happy, that's the most important thing. The second side of your floor twist, just see how able you are to weight the legs down to the feet, and shoulder on the other side. If you're still in side one, it might be time to think about moving on to side two. Don't rush though. If you're ready to come back to side two, that's absolutely fine too. And if you come out of side two, then just, what would your body like to do now? Is there any little movements you'd like to do before we settle down, finally? Relaxation and breathing. Or it might be you just want to lie quietly. Quite nice, even if you're going to lie with your knees bent, it might be nice to lengthen your legs out for a moment on the ground. Just see how it feels to have long legs, and then you can bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. So just making yourselves comfortable now for some quiet lying. And I was just thinking then how perhaps when all the yoga, mudras, the breathing exercises, maybe what they do is allow us to be able to lie quietly and do nothing. So let's see whether that's possible. Lie quietly, to do nothing, but to keep present with the sensations of the body and the breath. Because the mind can be very powerful and start to pull us away. As much as possible as we lie here for another minute or two, just letting thoughts move through us, letting the breath move through us, being aware of the sensations of the body, air on your skin, the ground beneath you. Noises both near and more distant. So I've rung the bell, but there's no need to leap up unless you know you need to. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful day. Good to see you all. Thank you so much.